The bold and the beautiful. The escape of Luna Nozawa, no one saw it coming. A routine prisoner transfer. Bright daylight. 3 officers. A reinforced vehicle. Luna Nozawa, calm, silent, cuffed in the backseat, stared out at the coastline as they wound along the narrow Pacific Road. It had been 3 weeks since the court found her guilty. 3 weeks since the verdict shattered every alliance she'd ever built. 3 weeks since the world decided she was no longer just Luna, the Forrester intern, the mysterious ingenue, the troubled niece. Now she was an inmate, a criminal, a cautionary tale. Until the van was hit. It happened fast, too fast for anyone to react. A white utility van, dusty, unmarked, came barreling from a hidden pull-off and swerved directly into the front of the prisoner transport. Metal screamed. Tires skidded. Time slowed. The transport vehicle swerved hard, hit a guardrail, and tipped violently. It didn't tumble, but it might as well have. The weight shifted. The front axle snapped. The van skidded sideways and crashed into the low metal barrier, which gave way with a shriek of tearing steel. The van rolled. Once, twice, and came to rest on its side, teetering over the edge of a low cliff that dropped 30 feet to the rocky tide zone below. Inside was chaos. Screams. Gas. Blood. A siren wailed nearby, echoing off the cliffs. A broken radio crackled with static and garbled calls for backup. One of the officers was unconscious. Another was slumped forward, groaning. The driver was dead. Lunasoma was alive. Cuffed, but alive. She blinked, dazed, tasting blood in her mouth. Her forehead was cut. Her arms ached. But adrenaline cut through the haze as fast as panic. Her entire world had just shifted. Again. She was supposed to be in custody. Locked up. Forgotten. But something or someone had just broken her free. She didn't know who. She didn't know why. All she knew was the door of the van had split open from the impact, and through the smoke and dust she could see the ocean below. And the network of old stonework carved into the coastal edge drainage system, ancient, half-forgotten, barely visible unless you knew where to look. And somehow she knew where to look. The sirens were growing louder. Reinforcements. Helicopters. They would be here within minutes. She didn't think. She acted. Luna twisted out of the restraint, her wrists liquid blood and sweat, and scrambled over the limp bodies of the officers. She dropped down into the wet grass beside the wreckage, barefoot, bruised, unseen. The coast patrols would assume she was dead. They'd focus on the cliff, on the rocks, on a recovery, not an escape. But she didn't fall. She disappeared. The ancient tunnels beneath the seawall weren't on any modern map. They'd been built in the early 1900s to control flooding and runoff from the old city, long before the developers turned this coastline into a glittering stretch of real estate. Only a few historians and vagrants knew of their existence now. Dark. Narrow, damp, full of echoes and secrets. Luna crawled into the first grate, dragging herself through rusted bars and cold stone, lungs burning with fear and hope. She was gone before the backup arrived. Back in Los Angeles, the news broke within the hour. Prisoner transport crash on PCH. Convicted felon Luna Nozawa presumed dead. The image of the smoking wreckage hit every news channel. Reporters speculated wildly. Some whispered sabotage. Others whispered escape. But one thing was clear. Luna Nozawa was missing. And if she was alive, she was on the run. The Forresters were stunned. Bill Spencer paced in his office. Katie sat frozen on the couch, one hand clamped to her mouth. Will, no older, wiser, sharper, watched the screen in silence, his jaw tight. Luna's name still burned in his mind, not as a criminal, but as the girl who had once changed him, challenged him, loved him. She's not dead, Will said quietly. Katie turned to him, her face pale. You don't know that. I do, he replied. She wouldn't die like that. Not like that, Katie wanted to argue, to insist they trust the authorities. But deep down, a mother's instinct clawed through her fear. She didn't believe it either. Something in Luna's eyes during the trial. Something unspoken. Something unresolved. Katie felt it now, a knot of terror and hope. If Luna was alive, she was desperate. And if she was desperate, she might do anything. Will stood. I'm going to find her. You're not, Katie said, grabbing his arm. Will stared at her, his voice shaking with conviction. I have to. The bold and the beautiful, blood, betrayal, and a baby between Finn and Steffi had everything planned. Their life was back on track after the chaos of past years, and with their love stronger than ever, they had begun talking about expanding their family. Another baby. A sibling for Hayes. It was supposed to be a new chapter, clean, joyful, uncomplicated. But nothing in Los Angeles stays simple for long, especially when it involves love, legacy, and the Forresters. And especially not when Sheila Carter still draws breath. The storm began not with an explosion, but a knock. A woman appeared at their door. Late 20s, nervous, eyes wide, voice calm but quivering with something deeper. Her name was Mariah. I think I'm pregnant with your child, she said, eyes fixed on Finn. Steffi nearly laughed, ready to slam the door, but Finn froze. What did you say? He asked. Mariah explained. Years ago, during medical school, she had gone through a fertility trial, an anonymous embryo donor program. She'd signed all the paperwork, agreed to the terms, assumed nothing would come of it. But she had fertility issues of her own and, years later, wanted a child. She returned to the same clinic, requested access to the embryos, and was shocked when one viable option was listed, a preserved embryo from a donor identified only as JF, Asian descent, and Mariah had already started the process. She didn't want money, she claimed only transparency. But when the results came back and confirmed a genetic link between the embryo and John Finnegan, the truth detonated in Steffi's life like a missile. Finn had donated embryos in med school. It had been anonymous, legal, medical, detached. But none of that mattered now, because the woman in front of them wasn't carrying some hypothetical genetic legacy. She was carrying his child, a child that wasn't Steffi's. A child that could not be ignored. Steffi was stunned, speechless. She tried to hide the panic, but her eyes betrayed her. The thought that another woman, a stranger, would share a child with her husband tore through her heart. It wasn't cheating. It wasn't an affair. But it felt like betrayal all the same. A betrayal not of the body, but of the future they were supposed to build together. Finn was caught between shock and duty. His first instinct was to support the woman, not romantically, not personally, but as a doctor, and more than that, as a man who had unwittingly fathered a child. He didn't want to hurt Steffi, but he also couldn't turn away from the unborn life now linked to him. And then Sheila heard the news. She watched from the shadows, as always, but pounced the moment the truth hit the press. A woman pregnant with Finn's child. A new grandchild for Sheila Carter. This was more than a miracle. This was an opportunity. She contacted Mariah directly, pretending to be a concerned party, a legal advocate, a resource. But what she really wanted was control. I can help you protect this child, Sheila whispered. The Forresters are powerful. They'll try to take him away. But I know how to fight them. I've done it before. Mariah was vulnerable. Alone, scared, and Sheila was all charm and false empathy. She offered legal assistance, emotional support, financial advice, anything to gain influence. It didn't take long before she made her move public. Sheila announced her intention to petition for visitation rights in advance of the baby's birth, citing future grandparental interest and protection. It was absurd and unprecedented, but not impossible in California's complicated family court system. Steffi snapped. She tolerated Sheila's hovering over Hayes. Barely. But this was different. A betrayal. She called an emergency meeting with Finn. I won't live my life with Sheila looming over our family like some twisted guardian angel, Steffi said, voice like ice. You made a mistake, maybe an honest one. But we fix it now. We draw lines, and so came the contract. Steffi drafted what she called a heart agreement, not legally binding in full, but morally absolute. She agreed to financial support for the child, healthcare, private education, even a trust fund. She would help raise the child not as a mother, but as protector, for Hayes' sake, for Finn's, for hers. But one clause stood above the rest, complete and permanent disconnection from Sheila Carter. No visits, no contact, no influence. If Sheila tried to insert herself again, all support would be revoked. Finn hesitated. He understood the condition, agreed with it in theory. But this wasn't just about Sheila anymore. It was about a woman's pregnancy, about ethics, about medicine, about his child. If Mariah wanted Sheila's help, did he have the right to stop her? And if he signed Steffi's contract, was he signing away his right to help shape this child's life freely? Caught between the Hippocratic Oath and his marital vows, Finn froze. That hesitation cracked the foundation. Steffi saw it, felt it, and though she didn't say it outright, something shifted in her eyes. Doubt, hurt, distance. Not because Finn had done anything now, but because, in not choosing immediately, he'd revealed something deeper. That part of him still wanted to believe Sheila could be changed. The contract sat unsigned on the kitchen counter for days. Then the lawyers got involved. Sheila, ever the predator, leaked parts of the agreement to the press, twisting the narrative into one of a vindictive wife using wealth and fear to control a helpless pregnant woman. Public opinion split. Some saw Steffi as the fierce matriarch she'd always been. Others saw her as cold, controlling. And suddenly, this private nightmare turned into a national custody and rights debate. Mariah filed for a legal declaration of parental independence, a move that would grant her full rights and potentially nullify any outside influence, including Steffi's support offer. But Sheila, of course, had already filed her own paperwork. A pre-birth petition for anticipated grandparent rights. It all exploded in court. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family, enemies. The Forresters glared from one side. Sheila smiled from the other. The judge listened, calm and precise, as lawyers slung accusations like weapons. Sheila Carter is a danger to any child, Steffi's lawyer argued. Her history is violent. Her psychological evaluations are damning. Her presence puts all parties at risk. She is the biological grandmother, Sheila's attorney countered. And she has a right to be considered. She has changed. Laughter broke out at that. Even the judge had to call for order. Finn was called to testify. He was forced to answer impossible questions. Would he allow Sheila to meet the child? Would he defy his wife to protect a patient's rights? Could he truly sever ties with the woman who gave him life again now that she might influence his new child? He said the only thing he could, I don't know. It was the truth. And it hurt everyone. Steffi stared at him, wounded beyond words. Her husband, her partner, still couldn't make the choice. Even now. Even with the threat in plain sight. She walked out of court before the session ended. The judge withheld a final ruling, requesting a full psych evaluation of all involved parties and a deeper review of past legal records involving Sheila, of which there were many. But in the meantime, Sheila had already won something far more dangerous: relevance. She was back in the conversation, back in the court, back in Finn's orbit, and that was all she ever needed. Behind closed doors, Steffi gave Finn one final choice. Choose your family, she said, or choose the woman who keeps trying to destroy it. Finn looked at her, torn to pieces. I want to protect everyone. I want to do the right thing. Steffi's voice cracked. Then protect us. Sign the agreement. End it. Cut her off. He hesitated. And Steffi walked away. Not because she didn't love him, but because she couldn't keep standing in a house where every shadow looked like Sheila Carter. The war for the child wasn't just legal. It wasn't just emotional. It was existential for Steffi, for Finn, for the child yet to be born. And in the city of glitz, betrayal, and beauty, this was more than just another scandal. This was the bold and the beautiful where blood isn't thicker than fear, and love isn't always enough to win.